Hi, I'm DJ Ware. On this episode of the Cyber Gizmo, I'm going to be looking at Microsoft's Common Base Linux Mariner right after this. Let's talk about what Common Base Linux is. And of course, Mariner is the current name for the build. That is an internal version of Linux that was developed by Microsoft that will support their Azure Cloud and Azure Edge environments. So that is its purpose. But let's take a look and see what it's all about. So the Common Base Linux is reportedly been developed since November 2020, but I don't think that's really true. I think that's more likely that that's when we first discovered that they were working on this. And that was an article by ZDNet last year that talked about Microsoft working on CBL Mariner. So Microsoft says that this will help them remain current on Linux and help them move forward with new ideas and new things that they can deploy into their Azure Cloud and Azure Edge. But that same group also maintains WSL 2.0, and they are also releasing that in order to support execution of graphical user applications that normally would run under Linux that would allow them to run that same look and feel on WSL 2.0. So what they have said publicly is that with this release of CBL Mariner, Microsoft is really embracing Linux. It is a Linux server distro. There is not a desktop environment here. But anyone can download it. You can install it. You have to actually compile it right now into an ISO or a virtual hard drive file that you can then deploy into your environment. It is for use as a traditional server side. They even tout that. You can use it for cloud. You can use it for edge environment. So that's pretty far cry from Steve Ballmer's statement back in 2001. Yes, I am bringing this up. Where Microsoft officially said by their CEO that Linux is cancer. And welcome to 2021. So first, why isn't it named Microsoft Linux or Windows? Why did they call it CBL Mariner? So it's a distribution that's built by and for Microsoft. It is not meant to be a general purpose deployment distro. So it's not one you can then just go take and create a desktop environment with it, install all your favorite packages and start going. No, it's meant really to be meant to be used by Microsoft internally. So it is quietly released. There is a guide to building out an ISO for CBL. You can deploy it on VMware. You can deploy it on Hyper-V. I'm going to be putting this on Proxmox today, so we'll find out if that works, but I imagine it'll also work on Zen as well as maybe GNOME boxes and some of the other ones. So, like I said, it doesn't include a desktop environment, and it is intended to be used to secure edge computing services. That is its mission in life. Microsoft sort of compares this to the way Red Hat would look at Fedora. Red Hat looks at Fedora as the kind of the idea shop, the development environment for building out its next generation flagship Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So does that mean that what Microsoft is really saying here is that CBL Mariner will be the development platform for all the later products that Microsoft does in Linux? I don't know. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that. But typically, if that's what they're saying, that would be what they might mean, is that they're planning on using CBL Mariner as their development point for future build-outs and other directions that they might take. So the CBL Mariner philosophy is you only need a very small set of core packages, and they are RPM-based, on top of CBL's common core. So you have a common core, which would be your Linux. It would have some of your boot utilities and systemd and all those things that you would need in order to bring up an executable environment. But then around it, you would need some core packages in order to support deployment of cloud environments and containers and all those things that you might need. So it is lightweight, and it is meant to be either the container host or as the container image, so the OS image that goes inside of a container. So by keeping CBL Mariner lightweight, Microsoft believes this will reduce its security attack surface. So I don't look at, I just have, I have a problem with that statement in that I don't look at security attack surfaces in that way. To me, a security attack surface is the production environment that's up and running, that's fully configured, has users on it, has services up and running, has ports open, and has drives and disks and data that's flowing all over the system. So that is a security attack surface because it is the surface by which an attacker could gain a foothold in to compromise the system. You can't compromise a system that isn't running or installed. But so you normally look at packages that are being used to deploy a distro as security risk because they don't become a vulnerability until they're proven to be one, and they have to be installed and running in order for that to happen. I know it's splitting hairs, but it's just the way I look at it. So Microsoft took some of its ideas and uses repositories from a number of places. They draw heavily from VMware's Photon OS project. Spec files, as I understand it, I don't build packages on RPMs anymore, but spec files, as I understand it, are used to build up the RPMs today. And so they're using spec files that come from VMware's Photon OS project in order to build RPM based packages that will then go into the core set of CBL Mariner. They also used the Fedora project, of course, to do that as well, and there are spec files for their RPMs that they have that will, and they're also using Qt, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, because Qt could also be used to support a graphical user interface. There's also DNF. There's also other things that they're borrowing from Fedora. They're using Linux from scratch for two reasons. One is to, again, get their package baseline and use some of their packages, but also to simplify their installation. Now, I did get the graphical environment to work once a couple days ago, but they have since obviously updated, and there's a bug there now, but preventing it's panicking when you come up. But before, I was able to get it to work, and I noticed what looked like something. The install looked like something like Calamari's to me, but it didn't identify itself as Calamari's. And the version that I had, maybe it does now. So, and the other interesting one is Open Mamba. So Open Mamba is an Italian-based distro, and that one provides their core set of goals is to provide architecture deployment for Linux on desktops, laptops, tablets, and phones. So they're really bridging Intel, AMD, ARM, possibly RISC-V. I did see some discussion on their forums about RISC-V. So yeah, that could open up additional direction for Microsoft, particularly in supporting Edge products. So yeah, I mean, but it also has a desktop environment from KDE and LXQT, which might be useful for VDI environments. I don't know. Of course, Microsoft has just released their Windows 365 project. And yeah, and then of course they also draw from the GNU Free Foundation core set of utilities, compilers, linkers, and libraries that are available there. So I say it's odd that they are using Ubuntu 18.04 as their development platform, but it really isn't. It's just that, which might indicate how long they've actually been working on this. It would probably predates the release of 2004 LTS. So yeah, I mean, it might be the reason for it, but Microsoft says this is the only one they've actually tested on. Okay, fair. I might run it. I might try it on 2004, but I might run into problems doing it on there too. Don't know. Nobody's tested it. You're on your own. Yeah. Anyway, but they also use quite a few things from Fedora project in addition to the ones I mentioned. TinyDNF is a thing, and TinyDNF is a lightweight version of DNF. It's very fast in deploying and bringing packages to end. So I don't know what the plans are for TinyDNF inside of Fedora itself, but yeah. The other one that they mentioned is RPM OS Tree for atomic image-based updates, but I have not seen anything that looks like a RPM OS tree executable that normally you would find like in Fedora, Silverblue, and so forth. I don't see those things, and so I don't know where those might be. I'm not sure how they're using it, and I haven't delved into the real deep parts of the documentation yet, so to see how they are actually using that. But if as I get information, I'll let you know, or maybe somebody in the comments can write, oh, this is how they're doing it. So yeah, so you have to build out an image first. There's no pre-built ISOs or VHDs, virtual hard drives, for use on the GitHub site. Now, I suspect that will probably change. It always does. Developers like myself are lazy. We don't want to keep having to recompile something over and over again. So at some point, somebody may put that into the build chain and create the full images for us. It just depends on how much storage space. Since Microsoft owns GitHub, I don't think storage space would be a real big issue for them. So they probably could store the ISOs out there if they wanted. But right now, the GitHub really includes two different types of generation streams. The first one is the package generation, and of course that produces the RPM packages that form the distribution of CBL Mariner, or at least the ones around it. And then there's the image generation stream, which it produces the ISO or the VHD, the virtual hard drive, that would be used in virtual machines or in full hardware installs. So yeah, the ISO image is a full ISO image. It will install on hardware, although I haven't really tried it yet. I'm not willing to give up my hardware to something that is new, yeah, without fully testing it. So I'd go the route of a virtual machine. I do my testing there, yeah, and then, So I guess the real question is, why did Microsoft work on CBL Mariner? They already had all this set up, right? They were fine. They had their Azure environments were deploying their cloud images. They were deploying containers. They had edge services that were out there running. And they have a number of other Linux projects, too, that are running in concurrency with all of this. So what the heck happened? Well, what happened was Red Hat. Again, yeah, does this sound familiar? Red Hat deprecated CoreOS, and Microsoft was using CoreOS to deploy their cloud-based images. They deprecated it in May of 2020, so that's probably the day after that happened, or the week after it happened, that Microsoft said, I think we need our own alternative here so that we're not dependent on the whims of some other large corporation to determine our fate and how we're deploying our systems. So if you're thinking that this is to take over the Linux world, I don't think so. I think this is the reason, and it makes sense to me that, they got burned, they got stuck. Okay, we'll just do this ourselves, and then we can control our own destiny. But I guess the real question is, it's the same group that develops for these other platforms like Azure Sphere, Sonic, which I believe is a slimmed down Linux OS for networking equipment. And then you have WSL, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux. That same group does all these, is my understanding. So how does CBL Mariner play into that? I'm sure they know, but they haven't told us. Maybe at some point in the future, maybe they will communicate that to us, and maybe they won't. Don't know. The licensing for Mariner is total open source. I haven't seen anything in there where it says Microsoft proprietary licenses for blah, 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 blah. It's all open source right now. And there are two, the GNU GPL license, which of course would be from the Linux kernel and the Free Software Foundation tools, and then MIT licenses, which would probably surround some of the other source-based RPMs that are formed around CBL Mariner in order to form the entire distribution. So in the first thing that we're going to need when we're setting up our development environment to compile CBL Mariner is we'll need Ubuntu 18.04 LTS, and the latest release of that is 18.04.5 LTS. The reason for that isn't because it's a particularly old environment that Microsoft believes is the only thing that will work. It isn't. It's the only thing that they have tested their build tools on. So rather than try to reinvent the wheel and figure out, where problems are going to occur or how to fix those, What we're going to do today is we're going to start with LTS 1804.5, and then I'm going to go ahead and get it updated. So yeah, I don't want to upgrade this to 2004, however, so we're going to say don't upgrade. But we are going to go ahead and install the updates that we need to the system. This is a freshly installed version of the system, and so we will need to make sure that it's up to date, and I'll be back when that's done. Okay, so we're all set, and we'll go ahead and restart after the updates, which is always a good idea to make sure that you're running on the latest kernel, the latest patches, the latest libraries, and all that stuff. So and we'll just validate that everything is fine. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for a GitHub page for Microsoft CBL Mariner, and this is the actual repository for the build environment. And we'll go down here and we'll look at getting started, and you'll notice there's a toolkit documentation here which explains. So there's a quick start guide. You can build custom Mariner images if you want. There's also a build user guide if you want to customize it, how the build works, and then what things have they implemented as far as OS security is concerned. But the thing that we're interested in is to start right here. And yeah, you'll notice the first thing we'll need to do is install some prerequisites. So let's go ahead and copy this. Now I'm probably going to need get. Let me just see. I don't think that is defaultly installed. No. And I don't think, and I know that they're, well here, let's just go through theirs, all right? CBL Prereq. And we'll go ahead and put these first commands in here. So I think the thing I'm really missing here is, yeah, we should have a library that we get. Let me see if I can find it here. Oh, okay, here we go. So we're going to need this. Odd that they don't have that in the quick start, but I guess maybe they're assuming that you've already set up a build environment. All right, so I need a CBL one.shell. And we'll go ahead and paste that in. So let's just take a look and see what it's doing. So the first thing is going to add a backports repo, and that is pointing to a Golang backports. Then it's going to install some required dependencies, which is make, tar, wget, curl. Now I don't see get on here, so let's go down here and add that. Let's actually go up here and add that, because we will need the get tools. Obviously we saw that in the last script. And then we're going to install pigz, and we're going to link a Go library into user bin Go. We're going to install Docker. We're going to set up a shell and then modify my user so that it is a member of the Docker, the Docker group. So I guess the other thing, since we'll go ahead and save that off, I guess the other thing I really need to do here is apt install OpenSSH server. And the reason for that is I prefer to use the command line to do this stuff. Oops. There we go. And I want to be able to copy paste from my local browser in, so yeah. And then it's going to ask me to hit enter. I'm going to do that. It should set up my local repo, then it should update my environment. and download the apt cache. Now it's installing all that stuff that I asked for the tools. So you'll notice I'm not a member of the Docker group, so I'm going to go ahead and exit out of there. I am going to have to probably reboot. So I'll go ahead and do that. All right. All right, so now let's check. Now I should be able to do a Docker help. Any of these commands, as long as you're able to run the Docker command without having to do a sudo, you know you're fine. So we validated it. We're good there. I'm going to just check and make sure that Git is here, and then we'll go back to our page, which is right here. Let me just kind of shove that over. So I think that's the same thing that I have in that second one. Let's take a look here. Or is it? To build the CBL master demo repository, you need to send the same toolkit and make file. So get clone Microsoft CBL, get, right, that's right. And then I'm not going to do a push. Right, I'm not going to do that, so. Okay, so now I want to go into that folder. And I think I have to go in, actually go into Toolkit. So I'll go ahead and go into Toolkit, which is a directory here. And then we'll go ahead and execute this command. I know I could have copied the whole thing, but I just want that one line. I think the reason for doing sudo is because it has to do all this prerequisite for the tool set. So we'll just wait for that to build out. There's the tool chain. And it's downloading the RPMs that it's going to need. This will take, on my machine, it's less than, it's probably less than 10 minutes, but your development environment could be different. So they're saying 4 to 5 hours. I don't know what they were compiling on, but yeah, I'll be right back. Okay, so it is complete. I started this about 6 minutes ago, so this took about 6 minutes to actually run through the tool build. Now, of course, there are other build options here that you can choose from depending upon what your needs are. As you saw, there was also a VHD build. There's a hypervisor, a Hyper-V build as well. So I don't know which way you want to go with this, but the first thing I wanted to do was to get my IP address here. So in order to be able to pull this off, and we'll go ahead and go back up a directory level, and then there's out, there's images, and full is there, and hopefully we should see, yeah, there's our image. So how that should be about 700 meg or so. Yeah, about 678 meg. As far as distros go, the ISO isn't that huge, but yeah, so let's see. I'm at 14, I think. So what I will do is I'm going to go, this is my native machine, so and then I'm going to pull this down to my NAS drive that I'm normally able to work with as far as Proxmox is concerned. Okay, so that's down. We'll look at my local directory here. And there's the build from yesterday, and there's the build from today. All right, so I don't know if they've fixed any bugs. I did find a few yesterday, so we're all good with that. I'm pretty much done with this environment, so I'll go ahead and just shut this down. Done with my build environment, and we'll go ahead and just power it off. And then what I will do is wait for that to shut down, but I can go ahead and get the VM created for CBL. Okay, give it a name. I'm going to create the ISO image I'm going to pull from here. I'm pulling the 26th, which is the one I just built. I'll leave the graphics at default. I'm not sure it'll matter. Go ahead and create my local hard drive there. It certainly won't need this much. And then I am going to use my Intel E driver for the network card. I just have had better luck with it. Now I don't know if that will make any difference for CBL-Linux or not. Probably it won't. Okay, it's built. So let's go ahead and start it, and then we'll turn on the console. And then I'll have to bring that over here. There we go. And we'll get local scaling turned on as well, so you can see what's going on here. So you have a number of installers. Now, the last time I tried the graphical installer, it failed. It had a panic, but we'll try it. Yeah, it's having a panic again. It's right here. So we'll go ahead and reboot it. Obviously a bug that needs to be fixed. It probably will be by the time you get to do this. Hopefully within the next couple of days or so. Now, I find that one really annoying. Fortunately, my audio is turned off on mine, but you may, yes, you might have a difference here. So you do have a choice between a full install and a core, and they give you some information about that. Full install would be a host OS, and then this, of course, would be a container OS. So, or a very lightweight one. I'm just going to do the full, and then there's my hard drive. Let me select that. You can encrypt your drive, so if this were production, I would definitely recommend that. But since it is not, and then your whatever host name you want to make it, I'm going to leave mine alone at the default. Create a user. Yep. Let's see how many seconds it takes to install. It's usually pretty quick. It's less than a minute or two. On my environment. Now, it's going to be different for yours. I don't know what you're running on, so. You may be on a beast machine and it takes you a whole 15 seconds to install. But and it should tell you when it's done how long it actually took. 48 seconds, so less than a minute. We'll go ahead and restart it. It tosses the CD-ROM out and it'll... Okay, so we've got the boot screen and we have the login screen. And we are logged in. So let's take a look around and see what we've got. First, let's take a look at how much disk it's taking. root partition 1.5 gig in use. Now, of course, there's no HTOP information out of it. Yeah, all right. Now we can see a full view of the system. So 99 total. We've got 5.8. That's not right. 5.8 gigabytes available? I don't think so. I only gave it 4 gig. So yeah, 1.8 gig, and that's way too much. I don't believe that. Let's try VM stat. That seems way too high. So out of 2 gig, I'm using a little over 2.5, 250 meg or so. Yeah, 250 meg of memory, which that's not a lot. I mean, it's not huge. Let's see what kernel we have. 5.10.42. At 5.10, of course, is an LTS kernel. Now, somebody told me that this was supposed to be a rolling release. I'm not sure about that, but I will tell you one thing. This uses the tiny DNF. Now, you do have the normal DNF here as well, so you can do... Let's take a look at the repo. I may have to do a sudo. No, so I have 2 repos, the base and the update. So I do not have the non-free or the proprietary repositories. And I'm not quite sure how to find those. I did a DNF. I'll have to go back and read the directions and see where my repos are located to add them on. But so normally you would do a DNF. So let's do a search for OpenSSH. Okay. So I have clients, debug, server. So we'll do a tdnf install. I also want git. Oops. Yeah, I keep forgetting to do that. I should be used to doing that. All right, so I've got git coming. Yeah. I'll go ahead and shut it down.